Just imagine, you are at the peak of your career. You've become a thrash metal icon, a millionaire, you've got a platinum record, a Grammy nomination, and after trying to outshine your previous band and being a kind of a dictator in your current one, you finally want to just chill, work as a team, and push yourself as an artist. And so what do? You decide to record your next album live with the whole band doing each song in one take. What could possibly go wrong? Youthanasia, a play on the words you, Thanos, and Asia, is a studio album released in 1994 by Megadeth, the heavy metal collective founded by a certain David Scott Mustaine in 1983. And this album marks the stage 2 of their departure from thrash. And during this transition, the signature sound that made Megadeth the household name gradually faded until it was hard to believe it was the same band. Well, musicians naturally mature and want to explore something new, but to some extent, this particular change was driven by Mustaine's desire to finally have his own Black Album, the biggest blockbuster in metal history, which happened to be made by his previous band, Metallica. And I'm not making that up. Dave himself said that in his autobiography, even though Critic and Risk were not exactly metal, I have to admit some of those tracks were still great, maybe a bit underwhelming for my taste, just like Rust in Peace could be overwhelming for some. But as was mentioned, there was a transition between these albums, and somewhere on that spectrum lies a sweet spot. A Megadeth that was accessible to a broader audience, yet still sharp enough to not alienate their core fans. In other words, the closest they ever came to the Black Album. Countdown to Extinction was the band's breakthrough. It was a bit easier for the average ear than Rust in Peace, but part of the success was also in the timing. It kind of fit in that tectonic shift that was happening in the heavy music in the early 90s, with the bands like Nirvana, Pantera, and again Metallica with the Black Album, and Countdown still remains the most commercially successful album by Megadeth. But I believe it was the follow-up, Youthanasia, that hit that sweet spot. It dropped at the height of grunge and alternative, and alongside a few other metal records like Pantera's Far Beyond Driven, it was like a signal, a wink. Hey guys, good old heavy ain't dead, just a bit adjusted. It was, in all senses, the peak of Megadeth. Although some might say they wasted it, that they should have done another Rust in Peace while the magic and the man were still there. So, did they really waste that magic on Youthanasia? Hell no! There's Killing Road with its killer riff and even killer rare solo. We have the parade of key changes in Reckoning Day. The Black Sabbath-esque title track. My favorite, which they never played live, Addicted to Chaos. And of course, Megadeth's first full-blown ballad and their biggest hit. And one track in particular stands out, for a couple reasons. Firstly, for the unique riff, and secondly, the insane amount of takes it took to get it right. Remember what I said in the very beginning about the album being recorded live? Yeah, that's literally what Dave and company went for on Youthanasia. Recording albums live in the studio with the entire band playing together and being recorded together was common in the 50s and the 60s, but this method faded in the 70s as multi-track recordings allowed for more control, more precision, and more complex arrangements. However, layering could lead to going into the weeds, over-polishing, and thus spiraling cost on studio rent. Yeah, that shit ain't cheap back in the day, and so sometimes some bands brought back the old-school technique to preserve that raw, authentic sound, and to save on cash too. And eventually, the stars aligned for Megadeth to give it a shot too. After Countdown, they kinda had enough of LA, so they packed and moved to Phoenix, Arizona, where they built their own studio named Fat Planet, a space where the boys could do whatever they wanted and how long they wanted. Speaking of the boys, that lineup of Megadeth, which we now call the Golden lineup, Dave Jr., Nick, and Marty, was already the longest running at that point. And so they were like, we're kind of good at our shit, we kind of get along, and we've played hundreds of shows together, so let's bring that chemistry to the record. And yeah, Metallica went through something similar on the Black Album again, which gives us another excuse to compare Youthanasia to it. But there's one big difference in favor of Dave's band. While Metallica did play together to capture the live vibe, they still recorded each instrument separately. Megadeth, on the other hand, not only did play, but also recorded the drums, the bass, and 2 rhythmic guitars all at the same time. Yeah, the vocal solos, acoustic parts were laid down later, but the foundation was in one continuous take from start to finish. Continuous, yes, but not necessarily a single take. Some songs clicked on the second try.
That was perfect for me. Yeah, that was pretty rocking. How was that for you, Nick?
I made a mistake in the first chorus.
But one turned out a true pain in the ass. It's Train of Consequences. Which they finally got. Can you guess after how many attempts? Well, you didn't have to, for that's literally the title of the video. Anyway, it took
42
attempts to catch that motherfucking train. Someone just kept messing up, and it's definitely not Dave Mustaine. How could he, right?
Notice everybody has to change their stuff but me.
Or maybe there was one particular tricky part. At the first listen, the song seems pretty straightforward, not too fast compared to, say, Killing Road. I'd be less shocked if Killing Road was the trouble. But the simplicity of Train of Consequences is deceptive. Starting with the main riff, it barely contains actual notes with the pitch, because it's based on the choked strings, so there's dead notes, which makes it pretty unique for Megadeth, almost funky, like something by Red Hot Chili Peppers. You know who, or rather what, we should thank for inspiring Dave to write such a riff? It's freaking Rain!
When I wrote Train of Consequences, I just moved to Arizona, and I'd bought a convertible, and they have things called monsoons in Arizona, which means that there's a storm out of nowhere, right? I had the roof down in my car, and then all of a sudden there was a huge rain cloud above my car. By the time I got to the studio, I picked up my guitar, and I was like, and just beating the guitar because I was pissed. I was soaking wet, and so was the inside of my car.
And by the way, massive thanks and a shout out to Eternal Tech, who found this clip, because I thought it was the police that pissed Dave off, but turned out it's Rain. Again, thank you, it actually saved this video. Now, if you think that dead notes are easy, try playing them for half song and like real dead without too many unwanted harmonics, which can quickly turn the whole thing into a mess. And then get the triplet bits in sync with another guitarist every single time without slipping. I'm guessing at least some of the retakes came from trying to nail that section alone. Then there's the pre-chorus, a bit tricky but nothing too wild. The chorus has distorted arpeggio, similar to that lick from Holy Wars. This part probably caused the least amount of starting over. But then comes the bridge. Remember that video, riff or a solo? This one falls right in the middle of the range, the kind of riff that wants to be a solo. Yeah, normal practice in Megadeth, by the way. But you know, it's one thing when the tricky part is in the beginning of the song. Once you pass it, you pretty much have a smooth ride until the end. But when it's in the second half, you gotta mess it up just because you have enough time to hype yourself up. And consider they probably had a few retakes in the beginning, not even getting to the final boss, that is the bridge. And even if it's not you, it's one of the other 3 guys who gonna trip up.
Took me by surprise there, dude.
And so with each new retake, you freak out more and more, so you're prone to mistakes, and so the cycle continues until you've done it 40 plus times. But eventually, they did it, and the result was amazing, but at what cost, yeah? I wonder how they did not break up in the middle of it. What do you think? What made Megadeth struggle so much with Train of Consequences? Because, you know, I'm still more of a bassist. And speaking of the other non-guitar part of Train of Consequences, talking about pushing yourself as an artist, on this one, Dave really outdid himself in terms of singing, to the point it was almost listenable to those who cannot stand his vocals. The group I'm not part of, by the way. Then Marty Friedman. He played half a rhythm, but he is more of a lead guy, and Dave Mustaine said that Youthanasia is his best work. But Marty is that kind of guitarist, whatever song he touches with his lead parts, it turns into gold. Then the drums, late Nick Mansell. This was his peak. And even though the music was not thrash metal where he could shine the brightest, songs like Addicted to Chaos, for example, have really unique drum parts.
I don't want to play anything heavier than that because I want to live to be 60.
And last but not least, the bass by Dave Ellefson. Just like with the previous video about Pantera, talking about that album and that song was inspired by transcribing that. Here the same. I transcribed the bass of Train of Consequences, which reminded me how good of a song it is. And so here I am making this video, and a few words about the bass part who actually care about it. Dave Ellefson is the master of balance. For example, in the main riff, the dead note 1, but it still has the key. And so Dave Ellefson just backed it up, had the low end on the ta-da-ta-ta-da-ta with the open string, E flat actually. And he left the room for those triplets and stuff. By the way, maybe I'm overstating the hardness of those triplets, but anyway, he really did what he had to do in that main riff. When in the chorus, he did his signature going up at the end to give this, movement for the riff with his bass. And then in the bridge, he did not invent anything, he just copied the riff note for note, making it even more powerful. That's another point to our suggestion that the bridge was the main pain in the ass of the song. A disclaimer. As it often happens, you just store these cool facts in your head and sometimes you forget where they come from. And I could not find the original source of these 42 takes of Train of Consequences. And if you know the interview or whatever, where it came from, please write in the comments, not with the link because it will go to spam, but just mention it. But I've already done this video, I've finished it, and that was like the final touch. But and while making this video, I was inspired again to make another song to transcribe another bass part from Youthanasia, which happened to be Addicted to Chaos. And you can check out Train of Consequences isolated bass plus tabs as a video on another channel in description and download the tabs too. And stay tuned of new tabs. You see, this is quite a fruitful endeavor when I transcribe the bass, and these videos come too. And next time, I guess we're gonna do some Metallica, namely the Cliff Burton era. Alright, did you like this video? If you did, push that like and support me on Patreon, buy me a coffee, or become a member of this channel. All links in the description. That will help me make more of these videos. Thanks for watching and see you next time, friends!